Right, good morning students. We are going to cover today the first poem in first flight, and that will be by Robert Frost. This is Dust of Snow. Now, Dust of Snow was actually written by Robert Frost, and he was one of the renowned American poet writers. Okay, one of the most renowned American poets of his times. Most of his work was around nature, and it might appear to be a gloomy or a sad poem, but he connects things very beautifully out here, and that's what we are going to study here. It's a very short poem. It's basically of 2 stanzas and 4 lines in total. Okay, so it's a short poem, but it has beautiful connections to the nature and how the poet perceives things. Okay, so a little about the poet. Robert Frost was basically from 1874 to 1963. That's his reign. Okay, so Robert Frost was between 1874 to 1963. One unfortunate incident that happened in his life was most of his works didn't get published for 40 years. He was not known for 40 years. It's only after he returned from World War from England, he came back to America, and that's when his work started getting recognized. Okay, so he basically, what he did was he employed settings from rural life to examine complex social and philosophical themes. So he actually took themes from the rural life and he embedded them in his poems in order to sort out complex social and philosophical themes. So social and philosophical themes, which are very core to the human existence, he actually made a very good combination of both. Okay, so he employed settings from the rural life. He used the rural life settings, the nature from rural life, and he actually embedded it very beautifully in his poems and lines with the complex social and philosophical settings of human life. Okay, talking about his achievements, he won 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. 4 Pulitzer Prizes. Pulitzer Prizes is like an Oscar in movies. Okay, it's one of the highest recognition that is offered for writings, literary writings, and he was awarded 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry during his times. All these 4 prizes were given away by John F. Kennedy, the American president. It's the highest honor that could be given in literary writings. Of course, Nobel Prize is there, but then this is specifically for literary writings. Okay, and he won 4 awards for his poetries. Okay, now this poem, basically, it's a very short poem, as I said, 2 stanzas of 4 lines. This was published in 1923 in his collection of New Hampshire. Okay, New Hampshire was the book that was written by him, and in that collection this poem was published way back in 1923. Okay, so he was actually settled in England, then he came back to America after the First World War, and that's when he composed most of his poems and got awarded and recognized as well. Okay, okay, now if I talk about the first stanza of this poem, the way a crow shook down on me, the way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. Okay, this is a very simple lines. The way a crow, what he is portraying is basically there is a hemlock tree. Now, what is a hemlock tree? A hemlock tree is basically something like a Christmas tree. It is a pine, and it has like this, a lot of snow gets covered on it during the winter season. Okay, so hemlock tree basically, it's a poisonous plant. Basically, it's a poisonous breed. So hemlock is a poisonous plant with small white flowers. It has got small white flowers, but is generally considered a poisonous plant and is considered as an ill omen as well. Whatever is poisonous obviously will be considered as an ill omen. Okay, so it relates to a hemlock tree. Okay, so there is basically a hemlock tree. There is some amount of snow in it, and the writer or the poet is just passing down the tree when a crow suddenly comes and sits on one of its branches, or maybe touches on one of its branches, or maybe just comes, sits and flies off. Okay, that has not been described. So, but whatever happens, there is an impact. There is an impact of this collision of the crow with the hemlock tree, because of which the dust of snow, the snow falls like dust on the writer or the poet. Okay, so the way a crow, the way has not been described. The crow might have come from a far off place and just sat down on one of its branches, or it might have just touched the tree or it might have been sitting there for a long time. Just when the writer was passing by, he shook, and basically the snow fell as dust on the writer. Okay, it is not dust, but the snow is actually falling down on the writer as dust particles. The way a crow shook down on me, shook down, he actually shook, and because of his shaking, the snow is actually falling down on the writer. So it's a very common thing that, or it's a very obvious thing that this poem has been set on the background of winter season. Okay. Okay, so hemlock is basically considered as a poisonous tree. It's similar to a Christmas tree, and since it's poisonous, it's comparable to, we can compare this to sadness, we can compare this to darkness, or we can compare this to despair. Okay, so these are signs that life is a little gloomy, life is a little sad, life is a little there is a little amount of despair in life, which this poisonous tree is depicting. Okay. The crow and the hemlock, both basically, if you look at the crow is also considered as, we do not consider crow as one of the beautiful birds, right? It is considered with it is compared to a scavenger, or maybe a dirt cleaner. Okay, so it is considered as a bad omen or sadness. Okay, it is considered as a, crow is always regarded as a bad omen or something which is connected to sadness in all the mythical things that we have. Okay, although it is a very useful, scientifically it is a very useful, I would say, a bird species, but then again it is connected to a bad omen or sadness. Okay, so the crow and the hemlock tree both represent darkness, gloomy and sadness. Both represent darkness, gloom and sadness. Okay, so in the first stanza itself, we are getting idea that the poet has a basically sad background for this poem. Okay, okay, what are the literary devices that have been used? I am just talking about the first stanza here. We will in the next slide proceed to the next stanza, and we will try to understand what is there. So what are the literary devices that are used? If you look at the rhyming scheme, okay, the rhyming scheme is A, B, A, B. What do we mean by A, B? See, crow, snow, A, B, and then again A, B. Okay, so this is the rhyming scheme. Crow, snow, me, tree. This is the rhyming scheme. So this type of rhyming scheme is known as A, B, A, B. Okay, okay. What is the other thing that we have? The other thing that we have is enjambment. What is enjambment? When the same sentence continues to the next line, no punctuation marks used in between. Okay, now look at this sentence very or rather this first stanza very closely. If you read it out, it will seem, or it will appear as just one sentence. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. The sentence is just one sentence, it's just that it has been put across in 4 different lines. It is just one sentence, and this criteria or this phenomena is known as enjambment. It is just one sentence, but it is expressed in 4 different lines. It is expressed in 4 different lines. We call this as enjambment. Okay, so this is one literary device. The other literary device was the rhyming scheme. Okay, the third is basically assonance. What is assonance? If we look at the vowel sound out here, okay, vowel sound getting repeated. So let's say if we look at this second line, shook, we have O twice, down, we have O once, we have O here as well. So if you look at it, the O sound is getting repeated time and again in this one line. Okay, so this vowel sound is coming across because poets make use of these things to add rhythmic resonance to their poems. Okay, so poets make use of vowels, poets make use of pronunciations. Okay, so this is one thing that the poet has used. Okay, if you look at this, this is known as assonance. The vowel sound getting repeated quite a number of times here. Okay, so this is called as assonance. The vowel sound O is getting repeated quite a number of times in this sentence, one single sentence itself. Okay, so these are certain things about the poem. In the next slide, we are going to cover the remaining 4 lines and finish off with the other aspects of the poem. Okay. Okay, we are going to continue with the same poem. The second stanza, we will move on to the second stanza. We will reiterate how the mood of, or how the feelings of the poet have been transformed even even at the picture or a drop set of a gloomy a gloomy appearance. Okay, even at the background of a gloomy appearance, the poet has been able to gather up his spirits and become more cheerful. Okay, so we will move on to the second stanza. This poem, actually, a little bit of background about the history of this poem. The original name of this poem was Favor when it was published in 1920. However, it was renamed to Snow Dust in 1921, and finally it acquired the name of Dust of Snow in 1923. Okay, so this is basically the remaining 4 lines. It's just one line, but the remaining 4 lines of the second stanza of the poem. It is one of the shortest poems composed by Robert Frost. Has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. Okay, now rude generally is coming from ruined. Okay, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. Rued means held in regret. So maybe the day the poem was going through has not been that great. He was not happy with whatever and however his day has passed so far. Okay, but the moment he came under that tree and this dust of snow fell on him by the crow, he got a little happier. This was somehow this gloomy background still gave him a ray of hope, and he became cheerful. So although the ingredients of the scenery are very gloomy or rather shady and sad, still the poet was able to acquire cheerfulness under this tree. Okay, so this incident of snow dust showered on the poet by the crow enhances his mood. It enhances his mood, it transpires his mood, or it transpires his entire sadness that was there inside him. It transpires his mood, which was gloomy. He was obviously gloomy, sad and dejected. How do we know this? Of a day which I had rued. He clearly says it here. Okay, of a day which I had rued. Till this time of the day, he was not having the best of his days. Whatever the reasons were, he was not happy. Okay, however the day has gone so far, which was rude, which I had rued. Okay, so whatever the reasons were, the reasons are not clear, but still it was not one of the best days that he was having. So which was gloomy, sad and dejected. He was gloomy, he was sad, and he was dejected as well because of something that might have happened all throughout the day. So this incident of snow dust, which was actually showered on the poet by the crow through that tree, the hemlock tree, makes him happy. So in spite of a poisonous tree and an inauspicious bird, both of which are regarded as gloomy and sad, emblems of gloomy and sadness, still being present in the background of the poem, the poet feels better for the rest of his day. He somehow feels better, he somehow enhances his mood and feels better for the rest of his day. Okay, so now we will come to the literary devices of the poem, of this stanza in particular. So literary devices, if you look at the rhyming scheme, we will first go to the rhyming scheme. So since this is the second stanza, we will switch off to C and D. See, look at the 5th line and the 7th line. Heart, part. Okay, the rhyming scheme is C, C, and again this is D, D. Okay, so in between the 6th and the 8th line there is a rhyming, and in between the 5th and the 7th line there is a rhyming. So 5th and 7th line and 6th and 8th line, very much similar to what was there in the previous stanza. Okay, so this is basically the rhyming scheme is C, D, C, D. Just as in the previous stanza we had A, B, A, B, in this case it is C, D, C, D. Okay, with the rhyming schemes. Again we see enjambment. Okay, in this case also we see enjambment, that is the same sentence being continued in 4 lines. If you look into it, this is just one sentence, right? Has given my heart a chance of a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. It's just one sentence which has been expressed in 4 different lines and had been made as a stanza of a poem. Okay, so this is called enjambment, when you express one sentence in 4 different lines. Okay, so this is enjambment. Okay, now we also see the literary thing out here, alliteration. What is alliteration? Basically, a repetition of a consonant sound, of consonant sounds at the beginning of two or more consecutive or closely placed words. Consecutive or closely placed words. Okay, so this is basically repetition of consonant sounds. Repetition of consonant sounds apart from the vowels. Okay, the repetition of consonant sounds of at the beginning of two or more consecutive or closely placed words. Look at this. If you look at this, in this one there is a H, has, had, heart. Okay, although they are not consecutive, although they are not very close words, but still just two words in between them. And if you look at the consonant, see, these are things which poets use. Okay, these are things which poets use to add rhyme to the poem, to add rhythm to the poem. If, see, when poets used to compose in earlier days, they used to compose it thinking in mind that this will be transformed into a musical something, or some musician will be able to add music and lyrics, not lyrics, but will be able to kind of present it in a very rhyming way. So they used to be very specific about the consonants and the vowel sounds that they are using. Okay, poem, Robert Frost himself believed that whenever a poem is made or a poem is written, the best part is when you deliver it, when you actually read it aloud. Okay, so he always believed in reading poems aloud. So when you read poems aloud, then you have to be very specific about the words that we are using. Okay, so if you look at this, the consonant is there, H, and here also we have an H. Okay, then we have saved some. Okay, so look at this S and this, these are consecutive words. Okay, so saved and some. Okay, okay, so this is basically alliteration. Then we have consonants. What is consonants? Basically, when a consonant sound is repeated at the end or at the start of a particular word. When the consonant sound is repeated at the end or maybe at the start of a particular word. For example, if you look at it, day I had rude. So look at this, D, then we have a D, then we have a D. Okay, at the start or at the end, at the start or at the end. So these are basically the consonant sounds. Okay, day I had rude. Consonants means when a consonant sound is repeated at the end or at the start of a particular word. Okay, so this basically completes the poem. I will add some more things to the poem in the next slide. Okay, so you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, we are going to cover a little more deeply into this poem. Okay, a little more of literary aspect of the poem. Now, what do we know about the title? Okay, the title basically, this informs us that the poem is set up in the winter season. See, when you look at it, the dust of snow, obviously snow will come when? In the winter season. And winters in basically northern countries are very long and harsh. Okay, they are long and harsh, so obviously people have to make preparations for them. People cannot go out as they usually can in the other seasons. People cannot have the same way of life as they have in the other seasons. So winter season of course comes with a lot of hardships in these northern countries. A lot of snow happens, a lot of snowfall happens, roads get blocked, life is no longer normal. A lot of efforts need to be made in order to keep up with the pace of life. So the poem is set up in the winter season, and winters are generally harsh and associated with gloominess or sadness. Okay, it is basically in a very a despair kind of an environment. Okay, so the poet, if you look into the poem and its aspects, everything seems to be gloomy, but somehow the poet has able to gather himself up and move on with his life. Somehow all these gloomy things that are around him have transpired his day. At least it is not a life changing event that is happening here, but at least the day is changing. So it's all about our perceptions, how we perceive things around us. See, whatever is happening around us, obviously we cannot change that, but can we change something which is happening inside us? That's what all the poem is all about. Okay, so we are talking about the title here, which informs us that the poem is set up in the winter season, which is generally considered to be a season of hardships, a season which is long and gloomy, which has its own set of tantrums. Okay, so now we'll move on to the other aspects. The hemlock tree has been used, which is basically a poisonous and a coniferous tree. Okay, generally people do not venture around this tree. Generally people do not plant this tree either in their house or in their farms. Okay, so this is considered to be a wild tree, which if it grows on its own. Nobody actually plants it. Okay, so hemlock tree, again something which is connected with dejection or gloom or despair. We move on to crow, the aspects which have been used by the poet in his poem. It is a common, unattractive and black bird. Okay, so we all know it is an ominous bird as well. It is considered, or rather connected with bad omen. Okay, so all these aspects of the poem, if you see the winter season, the snow, the hemlock, the crow, all these are pretty much gloomy in their appearance. Okay, the poet's choice for the tree and the crow as agents of change are really surprising. So this is the connect of the poem. Okay, the poet has chosen the crow was on its way. The crow has not changed his life, or the crow has not intentionally made his day better. It was just sitting or maybe passing through that tree. It just happened to flow off or maybe flow in. So it might be flying into the tree and just sitting there, whatever has happened. Okay, but surprisingly this crow has changed his day. So it is all about our perceptions of about how we look at things. He was so engrossed in the day which it was so far going bad for him that he didn't have time to look around in nature. But this crow sitting at the top of a hemlock tree showered some snow dust on him just by accident or by chance, and it made him aware of his surroundings. It actually made him aware of the beautiful serene and white surroundings that he has around him, and it transpired his day. Okay, so see, the reason why we are often sad is because we are not aware of our surroundings. We are so engrossed in our own set of thoughts or in our own set of circumstances or events that are happening around us, that nature, if it has something to give us in terms of beauty, in terms of delight, we often tend to ignore it, and that's what that's what the poet is actually expressing. Even the agents of nature which are considered as unattractive or ill omen or maybe discarded, all these agents of nature are surprisingly powerful enough to make his day. So it all depends upon our perception. He is acknowledging that his day was not going that good, or he was engrossed in his some worry, or some troublesome incident has happened, or something that is really causing anxiety in him and making him restless. But this part of nature which is discarded by most of the people was able or capable enough to cause the change. Okay, so it is basically a little surprising that his agents of change are the ones which are discarded by humanity as a whole. Okay, it's not how or why it happened, but what it led to. So we do not know where this hemlock tree came from. We do not know where is it placed or how much of snow is upon it. We do not know where is this crow coming from. Is it sitting on, or it is flying off, or it is flying in? We are not aware of anything. Neither the poet has taken the trouble of making us aware of all those things. It's just that the crow was an agent of showering this dust of snow from that tree on the poem. Okay, so it's not how or why this happened. Okay, it's about what it led to. It changed his day. That is the crux of this poem. That is the main part of this poem, that how it has transpired to change his day. So the poet was paralyzed in his own thoughts of some regret. Something might have happened, some event has happened in his life which shouldn't have happened, or which didn't go his way. Okay, so the poet was actually paralyzed in his own thoughts, as we almost all of us do. If something is troubling us, we kind of ignore whatever is happening around us, and we are so engrossed in that thought of ours that we kind of do not even acknowledge whatever nature has to offer to us. Okay, when suddenly the touch of cold and fresh snow on his head. So this was just a sudden and random thing that happened. It's not a very unusual thing that happened. It's just a random thing that happened. A crow just happened to shower some of that snow in form of dust on him, and it kind of made him aware. It was like a switch on, okay. So when suddenly he was so engrossed in his thoughts and was passing by, when suddenly this happened, and that kind of woke him up. It suddenly wakes him up to the wide serene surrounding of nature and its beauty, and gives him a much needed break. This was basically a break from his mental paralysis. We all are in this mental paralysis of thinking too much. We all are so engrossed in things which do not actually deserve our attention or time. Okay, most of us are not able to manage our thoughts the way we should, and of course there is no training imparted for the same. So this is a much needed break, that this although these are agents which have been discarded by humanity, or they are not considered to be the perfect motivators, but then still they were able to impart a change in him. So what he means to say, if we actually look into the beautiful nature which has a lot more to offer, we would always be in a happy and cheerful frame of mind. So he was in his own mental paralysis. Something has actually dejected and depressed him, but this small incident actually triggered and made him aware of his surroundings, and somehow he actually completely forgot whatever has happened and moved on. So this was just a random and unintended kindness by a crow. The crow didn't do it intentionally. There was no intention. He was just on his way. The poet was on his way. It just happened. It's just a random incident that happened. The crow was not purposefully doing it, and it is not possible. Neither it was deliberately doing it. So it was just a random incident which caused the change. Okay, this was not a life-changing miracle. It's not a life-changing miracle. Just a day that the poet is talking about, which was not going in his favor. Okay, and that day changed. This was not a life-changing miracle, but a welcome relief. Definitely a welcome relief to change some part of his day. This was definitely a welcome relief to change some part of his day. It doesn't need something. So what it means here is that it is not always necessary, if your day is not going good, that you need to have something beautiful or glorious in order to make it beautiful. Okay, it all depends upon your perception. So it doesn't need something really beautiful or glorious to make an impact. Okay, the impacts can be made depending on our perceptions, how aware we are of everything that is happening. It's all a matter of perception. It's all how we perceive things. Okay, awareness and readiness. If we are ready to accommodate changes in life, if we are ready to kind of dilute ourselves with the flow of life, then obviously things are not going to be as difficult as they seem to be. We are all going through this mental diarrhea of overthinking about things, but if we let the life flow as it flows in its due course, nothing is ominous, nothing is bad, nothing is unattractive. Everything will have an impact, and of course we have to live our life as per the flow. So awareness and readiness to pick up from small things in life. If we are aware, we can generally pick up from very small incidents that happen in our due course of life, which we tend to ignore because of our mental paralysis with our own thoughts. Okay, so the struggle is with our own thoughts. However, nature has a bounty of things to give us, to transpire us, and we should always be upfrontly looking for all these changes that are happening. Okay, so this is the strong message from the poet, that it is basically, it can, we no matter what the situation is, we will always be able to overcome the situation and cross it with cheerfulness if we are a little aware of our surroundings. Okay. Okay, a little more into the analysis of the poem. I am missing my chalk here. Okay, a little more into the analysis of the poem. Okay, so we will talk about the characters that the poet has actually involved in the poem, the characters that the poet has used in the poem. So the first character that we are going to discuss is about the narrator. Okay, now the narrator or the poet himself had a bad day and he was in a gloomy mood. Something has happened, as he had already said in the line itself. So something has happened in the due course of the day which has made him gloomy, sad, an unfortunate set of events that shouldn't have happened according to him. So he had a bad day, he had a gloomy mood, but he was not a pessimist. Not a pessimist means, see, at times we have bad days, or at times things do not at times go with what they should be or according to us. So obviously that makes us feel gloomy or makes us feel dejected, or those things happen, but we shouldn't cling on to them. So a pessimist is the one who actually clings on to that and becomes more and more depressed. He or she doesn't become depressed only with himself or herself, but makes depressed or passes on the depression to whosoever is around them. Okay, so he was not a pessimist. He is actually being portrayed as a person who can pick up from small things and regenerate life. Okay, so had a bad day, no matter, and he was in a gloomy mood, but that is not a persistent thing. He is not a pessimist. Momentarily paralyzed by his own thoughts. He was momentarily paralyzed by his own set of thoughts, which were negative and which had its own things on him. So he was momentarily paralyzed, kind of cut off from the world by his own thoughts. He was confused, he was anxious, he was not happy with the events that have transpired through the day. So momentarily paralyzed by his own thoughts. Very often it happens with us. The little touch of snow brings him back to life. However, that little drop of snow or the snow dust that fell on him due to the crow actually brings him back to life. And he finds reason and courage enough to let go and move on with his life. So he finds reason and he finds courage enough to kind of move on with his life. Okay, so we with our perceptions can find our inspiration in the very little things that are happening around our life. It all depends on us. The best of things may fail to inspire us. The best of things may fail to pull us out of depression. And the smallest of things can be a miracle. It all depends on us. Miracles never actually happen. They are not external sources. They are internal sources. Okay, they are something which are concerned with the internal aspect of our life rather than the external. So miracles are basically a life changer. But how we perceive things, how we perceive things around us, it all depends upon us. Okay, so the little touch of snow brings him back to life, and he finds reason and courage enough to let go and move on with his life. Okay, he has a rare inner strength. Obviously, you need to have a rare inner. It is kind of a. He is not carrying on with his dejection. He finds a break and he moves on. He just ignores it and he moves on. There is some external source of nature which just happens to create a random thing, a random incident of just a small dust of snow falling on him, which is very random, and it completely changes his mind state and his outlook for the day. Okay, he has a rare inner strength and sense of awareness that saves him from being engulfed in his own pessimism. Pessimism, being pessimistic is not bad. We cannot always have positive things happening in our life. So there are things which will impact our life, but how we deal with it, how we react to it, how we carry on with it, how we kind of shut it off and move on with life, it all depends on us. Okay, so he was able to pull himself off from the very small random incident that just happened, which is of a very less importance. He didn't get something very beautiful in front of him to forget about things. A crow, a hemlock tree, these are not very beautiful things that are there in front of him to actually make him forget everything. These are just random things that are happening, and it has changed and transpired his complete outlook for the day. Now, the next agent that we are going to talk about, or the next character that we are talking about the characters in the poem itself. So the next character that we are going to talk about is the crow. The ugly crow gives the narrator a much needed break. It's like an unlikely angel. Hope and salvation are not offices of beauty. It's not necessary that a person who attains salvation, or a person who attains hope, or a person who says cheers to life, or a person who has a cheerful mindset always has beautiful things around him. Okay, so it's all about how we take things from around us rather than how things actually are around us. So it's all about our inner perception. Okay, so it is a very unlikely agent that a crow can actually change a person's mindset for the day. All the poet wants to hint is that if you have the right frame of mind, if you have the right perception, you can pick up from the most dull of things around you. Okay, so unlikely angel and hope and salvation are not offices of beauty. It gives an idea to us that It's not that you have to always have beautiful and best of things in your life happening around you to keep you cheerful. You can take the inspiration even from the most dull things that are there around you. The hemlock tree, that's the other character that we have. Nothing by itself is good or evil. See, hemlock is generally considered as an ill omen because it is poisonous, but nothing by itself is good or evil. It's how much we allow it that defines its possibilities. If we allow pessimistic thoughts to culture in our mind and in our inner system, obviously they will have an impact. Okay, it's how much we allow. So nothing is bad or evil. If the day is going bad, it has to go bad, and that's the reason it's going bad. Now if we stick around with that only and we pass on a day with that despair, dejection or gloominess, then obviously nothing is going to change. It's how we can change things. It's how we can change our thoughts. Okay, so nothing by itself is good or evil. Even the bad things that are happening in our life are obviously happening with a purpose, and maybe that purpose is not very much clear to us now, but we will have a clarity on it some point of time later. Okay, but how we perceive it and how we change it or how much of it we actually take in, of all the circumstances and events that are happening around us due to people, due to maybe some unfortunate events or whatever is happening around us, it's how much of we take inside it and how much of cheerfulness we can draw from it. Okay, so we define the possibilities of whatever is happening around us. What is the possibility of an event or a person to change or impact my life is and should be decided by me. Okay, we are the deciding factors. Okay, so the narrator allowed a scavenger bird, the crow, and a poison synonym. See, these are the most unlikely agents of change. They will make you more depressed if we go by the usual things. Okay, usual perceptions, if we go by them, then they are supposedly going to make you more confused, more anxious, or more gloomy, or more sad. But it has transpired in a different way in the poet. The narrator allowed a scavenger bird, the crow, and a poison synonym, the hemlock, to give him a wonderful and refreshing experience. He allowed all this to give him a wonderful and refreshing experience, and that is as much to the credit of the narrator as to the nature. This is a credit of the narrator as well as of the nature. Okay, obviously nature didn't have a much part to play out here, but that little dust of snow which fell on him actually made him aware, or actually pulled him off from his paralyzed thoughts and made him aware of the serene beauty that was there inside him, the white snow and the entire winter. Okay, that made him aware of the entire beauty that was there around him, and he pulled off from that and he moved on with his life. Okay, so these were the certain points that were there from my end on this one. If you have any questions or you want further clarifications on this, please feel free to post your comments and we will take it from there. Thank you so much for your time.